we're back on the record. Guys, so how you guys doing? Have you gotten through con law? Did that, you guys doing okay with that?
That is presently our focus.
So it was due on Wednesday, right? So I mean, if
you meant constitution, I thought you meant contract.
Oh yeah, no, you guys also have the contracts exam. Yeah, so how is that going? Contract. Yeah.
Yeah, in the midst of it.
Wow, it's a bit of a week, isn't it? Okay. So but you're keeping up okay? You feel like you finished con law, you're on to contracts, and now we're here. So tell you what, we're gonna blast through this week's tutorial, let you guys go early, wrap this up, let me go early because I'm also very tired. But let's just get this wrapped up and moved on. So the tutorial question this week, it's another one of these client type questions, right? How do we explain this to a client? And specifically, it's the duty owed to trespassers is the question that we're asking. So is there, and it's totally okay if the answer is no, but is there anybody who had a chance to think about the question and is ready to talk about it? Or do you guys want some time to gather your thoughts?
Well, sir, from my point, I think I'm a little behind. The question that I had, I thought it was the one in relation to the preparation of the facts. The one that speaks of which we had to present. I think it's remoteness of damage. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a couple of weeks behind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you looking at this week's? Are you looking at this week's tutorial question on e-learning? It's organized by date.
Okay, I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at the
I think I did miss that tutorial, that last one. Yeah, I think I did miss it. Sorry about that.
No worries. It's fine. It's not a big deal. So why don't we take a few minutes, and because you're not the only person, there's some folks sending me some private messages. Why don't we take a few minutes, sort ourselves out? We'll reconvene at 2:30, and I'm gonna mute myself, turn off my video, but I'm still gonna be at my desk. So if you need me, just pop in the chat and I will be available. Okay, so with that, we're going to give you guys your space. Okay, so let's reconvene. We are back on the record. So as a reminder, the question is to explain the duty to trespassers to a client. So would anyone like to go first?
I would
Well, Colleen, you came off mute first, so why don't
okay, so ahead. What I will look at first is the section of the Barbados Act. That is section 4, 2, 5, 6, and 7. This is C, that the visitor to the premises is reasonably safe and the premises are used for the purposes of which he is invited. That means that if he comes there, there shouldn't be any, maybe was animals let go, that type of thing.
Well, let me pause and ask you this, and ask this of all of you, right? Is there anything about this statutory language that suggests that it may not be about trespassers?
Trespassers? Mm, okay.
Anybody else? The question's for everyone. So,
Reasonable care?
I'm sorry.
You mean pertaining to reasonable care? Tiffany?
So you quoted some statutory language.
Yeah.
I want to know, does this statutory language refer to trespassers?
No, this refers to visitors. So I believe visitor meaning maybe a trespasser included.
What makes you say that?
I certainly didn't get to read everything in the act, but
Well, there was something about this statutory text that makes you think that visitors refers to trespassers. I'm asking you what it was. Like, you didn't just come up with that out of your own head, I assume. So
right, the hazard, something might be there that he don't see.
okay, why is there a duty to trespassers about that?
So I can't hear you so good though, because my mic is very low.
Have my mic up.
It's not you, it's mine. So let's someone else continue because I can't hear you so well.
Is this any better?
No, it's not yours, it's mine.
So then let's hear from someone else, right? Do we think that this statutory text that Colleen gave us addresses trespassers?
Colleen, can you repeat it again, please? I didn't hear what you said. Make the statute. Colleen, can you repeat the statute again, please? Colleen?
Section 4, 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7 of the Barbados Act.
Can you read it for me, please? I don't have access to my right now. Section 1.
Yeah, we can claim it.
Let's see.
Colleen, can you read
this legislation?
Go ahead.
This legislation provides that warnings without more do not automatically
This is not the text you were reading earlier.
Oh.
I want to focus on the text that you are interested in. So what is the statutory text?
The common duty of care.
Okay.
Yes. It refers to a duty to take care in all the circumstances of the case, as is reasonable.
But no, I am asking you to read the statute's text.
Oh.
You did that once.
Mm-hmm.
Read the text.
You mean what I read to you earlier?
Yes.
Okay.
Read it out again so that Sasha Ann can have it.
All right, to see that the visitor to the premises is reasonably
go on.
I can't remember. take reasonable care in using the premises for the purposes of which she is being invited.
Oh, so it refers to visitor and invited.
Yeah.
So Derek,
Visitor
why,
included, I look at that as included maybe an unwanted visitor.
Derek, why did you zero in on that word invited?
I mean, I think you were mentioning trespassers. Honestly, I didn't hear when Colleen read it the first time, but after she reread it, then, and you were, just one second. Then after you spoke about trespassers, those two words then seem to refer to trespassing.
Exactly right? Trespassers, by definition, are not invited.
Okay.
And so the statute doesn't speak to trespassers at all, right? And this is a point that was made in one of the lectures that we did, where I talked about the statutes in Barbados and Jamaica do not change the duty owed to trespassers. Those statutes only affect lawful visitors, right? So if you are asked to explain the duty to a trespasser to a client, and you start by talking about the statute, number one, the client doesn't care about the statute. The client wants to know what they do and what they have to do and what they can't do. All right. So when you say, and this is not a criticism, because this is what we teach you how to communicate. Okay. You are doing what you have been taught to do. So I don't want you to think that you did anything wrong here. But when you start, when I say explain this like you would explain it to a client, and you start by going, well, under the Barbados Occupiers Liability and Control Act, I very nearly snored in your ear to make the point that the client has already stopped listening. And you literally haven't communicated anything to them, and they're already thinking about something else. So in addition to, so like, the statute doesn't affect the duty to trespassers, and also leading with the statute is not going to be an effective way to communicate with a client. So let me say, right, I've been a little hard on Colleen. Let me say, it is really hard to go first, because you don't know what's being looked for. You haven't gotten any guidance, you haven't gotten any help. And so I really want to commend Colleen for sort of taking that step, right? Exactly. Trying is really important. This is a space where trying is so important. And I don't, even though this wasn't perfect, even though this wasn't quite what we needed, Colleen, I want you to know that I recognize the try. Okay. So who would like to take the next stab at it?
Sir, again, we've been not able to focus on this as much as we'd like, but I'd just like
It's
to
okay.
say
I don't expect perfection. So
the owner's awareness of hazards on the property. Sorry, sir, excuse me.
no worries. So, no, Colleen, you're absolutely right. Colleen says in the chat that she's accustomed to stating the act first. You are absolutely right that is what you have been taught to do. Okay, this is why I'm telling you I'm not criticizing that. Okay. I'm attempting to show you a different way of doing things that may be more effective for a specific sort of audience, right? Exactly. Yes, not in this case. Right. Sasha, you're muted. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just thinking, would it be correct to try to figure out from the client if they were aware of any danger on the property?
That's a really great
Um,
question. No, that's it. That's a really great question. Very frequently, when you're talking to a client, right? Very frequently, the first things you say should be questions, right? They should be questions that are intended to help you understand the issues that the client has brought to your office. And so, yeah, you know, tell me about your property. What, you know, what are the things that are salient? Is there anything that could be dangerous? Have you seen people walking across it, right? Because there's a difference between a duty that's owed to known trespassers versus potential trespassers, right? So I don't, you know, I think that starting by asking questions is definitely helpful, is definitely a good idea. But certainly that's not the end of the conversation, because at some point you do actually have to give advice. So, um, so what would you know, when the client just sort of goes, well, look, I don't know about all of that acts and common law and all that cases mumbo jumbo. I just want to know what I got to do. What should I do to so that, you know, when people trespass, if something happens to them, I'm not liable? Yep, Derek asks a really important question. Is there anything that's attractive to children? Now, I think that, you know, one of the things that I would encourage you to do is to distinguish between the duty that's owed to trespassers and the duty that's owed to child trespassers, and just sort of know the difference between those two, and be able to say, okay, you know, you don't meet the standard for being worried about kids, so we're going to lay that to one side, right? Whereas I do, you know, you know that children come onto your property, that creates a different situation. We have to make sure that we take care of that we protect, you know, we got to protect them kids. So, okay. Who's next? We'll do one more round of discussion, and then we'll call it a day a little bit early so that we can all wrap it up, because we're all tired. We're all doing our best. So go ahead, Linrick.
Yeah, how about the giving him an understanding of the definition of premises? Should that? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know
Because
that that's really necessary, because I think that the definition of premises is fairly intuitive, right? We have a piece of property. You, sir, Mr. Client, you exert control over it.
okay.
You are the occupier of these premises, right? That seems relatively intuitive. Certainly if a client, you know, one of the things that is hard to do over Zoom in these kinds of exercises is to, you know, gauge, you know, get the feedback from the face of, is this person I'm talking to understanding this? But certainly that would be, you know, if you start talking about premises and the client kind of looks confused, you may want to pull back and go, okay, let's explain what I mean when I say premises, right? So that's one of those things where you sort of have to judge where the conversation is going. But I would not expect that just sort of out of the gate, you need to define that. Does that make sense?
Yes, please. But I was just thinking of like it can be fixed, movable. And I don't think the question property fixed, movable.
Oh yeah, no. Those
Yes.
the issue of fixed property versus movables and immovables and all of that. That's not going to play a role in
Not among
this.
the- okay.
There are, I mean, there are situations where like an item that would be classified as a movable can be considered a premise. Things like caravans may be classified in that way. But those are going to be edge cases that are not going to be the if that sort of thing presents itself, you're in your office, you're going to have enough lead time to be able to kind of to sit down and do some research before you have to talk to the client in any detail. So Ashley asks, wouldn't we talk to the client about the duty of common humanity? Yes, that is absolutely correct. That is the duty owed to a trespasser. So Ashley, how would you explain to a client the duty of common humanity when he goes, look, just tell me what I have to do? How do I get myself off the hook? So go ahead.
Okay, so from what I understand, so you as an occupier can, if you know that people may trespass on your property or whatnot, you can take reasonable steps to deter the person, or like put up like signs or a fence or have a dog, something like that. And once it's reasonable, and if the trespasser, seeing all these things, still decides to go into your property, ignores all the warnings and deterrents that you have there, then you would not really be liable.
I mean,
Yeah.
pretty much if you've done what you need to do in terms of deterrence, pretty much the only way you would be liable is if you walked up on and cackled and shot him in the face. Probably not, shouldn't do that. So, but yeah, I think that's sort of the key piece of this, and maybe you ask some questions about, whether there are any hazards that the client created, right? Did you, Mr. Quarry owner, did you dig out a 300-foot deep pit that is now filled with water? Well, maybe we should, maybe you should do something to keep trespassers from going and swimming in said quarry. But you see the point about how like the duty of common humanity is all about like making sure that the trespasser knows that this is a place that they should not be going, right? And if they go there anyway, now the risk of any hazard is on them, as long as you don't find them before they, as they're lying on your property, bleeding and screaming. So. But
So,
that
Sarah, sorry.
yes, go ahead, Sasha.
I'm just thinking, so is this to say then that technically everybody who owns a property should have it like fenced wrong and secured and all of that, just to safeguard themselves from?
I mean, again, it's about what's reasonable from sort of a risk management perspective. So, for example, right, if you look at the property that I live on, right, I have a fairly small curtilage. It's flat. There's not any like trenches or pits or anything. It's mostly just enough space for my house. I don't have a lot of yard. And so maybe it's not reasonable to expect me to fence up this little piece of property on the risk that, you know, somebody comes in and, you know, trips over the railing on my back patio and you know, breaks their neck. Maybe that's not reasonable. But maybe if I knew that, you know, children from a nearby primary school were cutting through my backyard, right? So then that raises the question of the child trespasser. Maybe it is reasonable to expect me to put up a fence and say, no, we're going to keep you off this property, right? So does that make sense, Sasha-Ann? That, you know, that it's all about what's reasonable under the circumstances.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what other questions do you guys have? Or are you all just exhausted and want to go off somewhere and die for an hour or two?
Sir, I know you answered me, but when I mentioned my earlier suggestion, I was looking at something like a boat that is probably not seaworthy, but it's still docked, like the thing, probably the creanage, and let's say it is not seaworthy, and the child probably gets on board and moves it, and it.
Well, that's an actual case, isn't it? There was I'm blanking on the name, but there was a case with an abandoned boat on
Right. Yeah.
on public property, and some kids were there were actually two cases involving the same boat. There was one where kids were just playing on the abandoned boat, and the court said, well, there's not really liability there because there's no reasonably foreseeable danger with that. And then there was another case involving some older kids who were actually trying to restore the boat and make it seaworthy, and the court was like, no, that's too far. That's a reasonably foreseeable danger, especially for these teenagers, and the council had a responsibility to remove the boat so that it wasn't an allure to them. But if I remember correctly, the premises in that case was actually like the public property, like the riverbank or the lake shore that that the boat was resting on, not the boat itself. Am I remembering that case incorrectly?
The yeah, for the second one, I think I could recall with that one. Yeah. That's correct.
Okay. So I think, you know, you're absolutely right that there are circumstances where, you know, movable items can be considered premises, especially if they're large enough to be considered as locations themselves. I mean, just sort of to throw this into current events, right? That the poor guy who's captaining the ship that is blocking the Suez Canal right now returned us to the 1840s in terms of ship traffic routing. He has a duty to, you know, secure his ship from kids under the common law. I'm not going to comment on Egyptian law or maritime law, but like under the circumstance, like the common law would say that, yeah, you gotta keep them kids off your boat, and your boat is a premises. So does that make sense, right?
Yeah,
How,
very much so. Yeah.
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 Okay. So anything else, guys? Anything else you want to talk through? No? Okay, let's wrap it up. Look, I know you guys are busy. I know you're exhausted. 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks.
Sir, before just I want to be. Can I just interject here? To be sure.
Sure, sure.
Right. I just want to be certain. Visitor is interchangeable with trespasser?
No,
No,
no.
not at all. Not even by not by it cannot be interpreted through legislation. Cannot like
I mean, you could write a legislation that would do it, but
oh, okay.
no existing legislation does that.
Not okay, okay.
Okay. Derek asks how many topics we have left to go. My understanding of the calendar is that we have another week on nuisance and then a week on the trespass against the person torts. And that's it. That's all that we have left to cover. And then we will be into the review week and then teaching will be done. So, okay. So I will let you guys go. So get some rest, take care of yourselves, but also do that contracts exam. So, all right, take care, guys. I'll see you next week. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.